Alright, let me try and set this up. I hope you guys can hear me. Okay, I should be live now. Alright, this is good. Hopefully the audio works correctly, works properly today. Hey everyone, welcome to another live stream. Thanks for joining me today. Today we'll be talking about art critics and also how not to get discouraged when practicing your art. When it comes to art critics, well, actually I'm personally a critic because I review a lot of art books, I look at a lot of art, and from the perspective of an art critic, sometimes you have to know where that critic is coming from, the person who is giving that critic. And the number one advice that I would give you is, if it's constructive criticism, then you can learn from it. It's good criticism. And critics or criticism, it's really directed at the work. If it's directed at the person, you can just disregard the critic, because I'm working in a newspaper company. I do graphic design work. Sometimes my work gets critiqued, and it's always about the work. So my colleagues, they will say, oh, this design, it doesn't look good, this drawing, it doesn't look good. It's about the work, it's not about the person. So don't take it too personally. But when some people, they say that, oh, your art is lousy, and because you're lousy, then that is very different, because they are making it personal. And those critics, you can just disregard them, because those critics, you cannot learn anything from those statements, so you just ignore them. And occasionally I get critics on my videos as well, like for example, why are there noise in the background, like traffic noise? That's actually good criticism, because it's about the work and it is something that I can use to improve my videos. So I actually use that to improve my videos. For example, to block out the noise, I would close the windows, and that would make a better video. And you can use this to apply to your art as well. So most important thing, learn from constructive criticism and do not take it too personally, and ignore the trolls on YouTube, or ignore people who are just criticizing you, not your work, just criticizing you because it's you. And also the other thing is, you have to know where the critic is coming from. So for example, a person or your art teacher, for example, have you ever attended an art school or an art lesson where your art teacher would teach you something, and then they would say, oh, your drawing, it doesn't look good, it doesn't look like what I have taught you. And that's because they are looking at your drawing from their own perspective. To give you a more extreme example, it would be something like, I personally love Japanese animation. So Japanese anime or Japanese manga, it's another art form, but not everyone likes it because of the big flashy chibi eyes in Japanese characters, or they have the same face syndrome, or the hair is too spiky, or the coloring is too cell-like, too anime, too bright, too very not very realistic. But despite all that, I love Japanese anime. My friends, some of my friends, they do not like Japanese anime. I'm sure if you ask some of those live drawing teachers, those old school live drawing teachers, some of them may not like anime as well. But if you show the same piece of art to different person, some would like it, some would not like it. It's just it depends on the person who is looking at the art. And the second most important point is, the person who is giving the criticism, sometimes he or she just want to annoy you. It could be a 30-second criticism, like, oh, your art drawing sucks, your personality sucks. It's just a 30-second rant for that person, but if you take it to heart, then that criticism will live in your mind for the whole day, and you get depressed for the whole day, while the person who has criticized you, he or she will just forget it in less than 1 minute and go about with his day. But you are the one who is going to think about the criticism for the whole day, or maybe for the next few weeks, and you may even remember that criticism for weeks or even months. All right, I see a lot of people joining the chat room. This time I have put my laptop here this direction so that I can just glance down very easily to take some questions. And this is because of constructive criticism, because last week or 2 weeks ago when I did my live stream, I put my laptop on this side here, and when I look at the screen I have to constantly do this. So someone commented that I should put the laptop nearer to the camera and higher up, so that's what I'm doing now, so I can easily glance at the chat room to take some questions. So that is constructive criticism, and I learn from that. And when people give me criticism, I try to take something away from that and try to improve myself, improve my art, or improve my videos. And if you use constructive criticism, you can use it to grow, use it to improve, and that is great. So don't take criticism too seriously. All right, let's see if you have any questions from the chat room. I see a lot of people. Cora Brown, Chica Mendeleska, Paint to Paper, Leandro, Tendance, Lide, One, James Barton. James Barton is a regular audience on my YouTube channel, so if you guys have any questions, just feel free to post it on the chat room. It can be things about sketching, it can be about criticism on how to improve or how to practice, because today we are talking about criticism and we are talking about motivation, how not to get discouraged when you are drawing or painting. So what I've talked about earlier is on external criticism, criticism that are basically things that people say about your art. There is also inner criticism. I'm not sure if I'm going to go into that, but these are two books that I have that talks about inner criticism, and they are quite thick. So I think I shall probably skip the inner criticism part because it is it probably needs a live streaming section on its own. All right, that's I think there are the questions are not coming in yet, so let's talk about motivation and how not to get discouraged when you're drawing when you are a beginner. When you are a beginner, you just start by practicing. Just enjoy the process. Do not focus too much about the result. When I first started art, when I first started using watercolor, when I bought my first box of watercolor, as I paint the wash on the paper, I could really see the colors appear on the paper, and it is quite therapeutic. Anyway, the colors, they look great when I draw with a pencil on the paper. I like to look close at how the graphite attaches itself to the paper and how the ink would glisten or shine with the light. All those things are very tactile and they add to the experience. I don't really focus on the art back then because I was just learning, and I really like the experience of drawing with traditional media. So if you are just a beginner, focus more on the process, focus on enjoying the process. As you practice more, you will get better. So don't be discouraged because everybody starts from the beginning. Nobody knows how to draw right at the start. All right. Let's see. Yes, I have spiky hair today because I just came out of the bath. It's 9 a.m. right? Is it 9 a.m.? Yeah, it's 9 a.m. right here in Singapore. So it's early morning. Yesterday night I was working until 2 a.m. Yeah, so I have to wake up early for this live stream. All right, we have one question by Dar Ever P. What's one critique that you received that you refuse to change because of preference? Well, that's a difficult question because, all right, recently there is one critique that I received. It's like the critic or the criticism or something along the way is like, oh, your sketching is a bit loose or sloppy, your watercolor is a bit sloppy. And that is actually true. I used to be much neater. I used to color within the lines, but nowadays, because of time constraint, I have to color really quickly. I'll just paint outside of the line. Sometimes it's a bit too loose, too sloppy. But that's just a style. I mean, I can be a bit neater, but that would require more time. So you have to look at the criticism. Some people, when they look at your art, they may not understand your art. For example, if you are sketching outdoors, if you are just doing a sketch outdoors and people look over your shoulders, if those are people, they do not have any understanding of art, sometimes they may say that, oh, your art looks good. Sometimes they may say that, oh, your art doesn't look good. But personally, when I'm outdoors drawing, I have never received a single negative criticism. All the criticisms or all the comments are actually very positive, like, oh, that's a nice drawing. Even though at that time the drawing may not be good, but they always say that, oh, it's a nice drawing. I wish I can draw like that. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. So regarding back to the question, so my style is a bit sloppy and I think it's okay, but sometimes it's good to see whether or not you can be not sloppy. So if you get a comment saying that your art is too loose, maybe you can try and draw a bit tighter and see how it feels like. Or if someone comments that your art is a bit too stiff, you can try a different style to see how it looks like and how it feels like, because if you try different styles, sometimes you may discover that you like a different style or you like a different media. Okay, let's take a look at some of the questions. My friends always this question is by Prabhuduta. My friend always hate on me. They are inconsiderate to my feelings too. How do I deal with them? Alright, this relates to the point that I talked about earlier. So when your friends give you negative feedback, negative comments, things that you cannot use to improve yourself, just listen, let the words bounce off your face. Just listen to them, but you can sort of disregard them because their negative criticism, for them it's just fun. They're just picking on you. After 5 minutes, they would go about doing their things. They would forget about the criticism that they said about you, but you will remember that for the whole day. So it's not really worth the time, especially if it's not constructive criticism. So just learn to ignore them, let the words bounce off your face. Alright, let's see. William Briggs, just stumbled upon your live stream. Do you have a schedule? I try to do my live streaming session every 2 weeks. This is actually the second or the third live streaming session, and I'm using new equipment that I bought because of the bought with the money from my patron supporters. So that's why the video quality looks great now. The earlier equipment that I bought the equipment is spoiled within a week, so I have to buy new equipment. So thank you very much, patron supporters. If you are on the chat room, let me know. This live stream is made possible because of your support. What is the harshest critic you have got? This question is by Alex Lorraine. I don't think I have received any harsh critic. It's always about the work, and I do not take it personally. I think the critics that I get, the harshest one, are probably at work, but even then it's always about the work, because I'm in newspaper, I do graphic design. The work that we create, like infographics, they need to contain information that readers might want to read, and sometimes when I design the graphic or design the layout, I may miss out certain information. I get critics on how to improve that so that the graphic is better for readers, and I guess that's about the harshest I can think of. But there are definitely a lot of critics, harsher critics than mine. I read one, and that's from one of my favorite artists on YouTube, Holly Exley. She received a very nasty comment, which is from an Holly Exley is an illustrator from UK. She is a fantastic illustrator. You should check out her YouTube channel. And she's a very accomplished illustrator. But even at her level, she gets criticism as well. And one of the harshest criticism that I read was this older artist said that his or her paintbrush is older than Holly, and that is to me is very nasty, and that is basically useless criticism, because it doesn't really help her improve, and she is already a very good artist. So saying that your paintbrush is older than her, that is a fact, but I don't think you can take any positive learning aspect from that comment. So it's a very silly comment, and when you give critics, it also reflects a lot on the person who is giving the critic. So when you look at art exhibitions, for example, art competitions, when they submit paintings for judging, and when the winners are announced, you look at the painting and say, wow, that painting, why does it deserve to win? So when the judges are critiquing the work, when they are judging the works, they pick a specific painting to win, and that painting doesn't really match what you have in mind. It says a lot about their judging criteria. It says a lot about their personality as well. So critics, you have to see who the critic is. Or if you have a critic from a very good live drawing teacher, of course, most of the comments, his or her perspective will be from live drawing, and you know that you can expect the critics to come from that sort of perspective, and you can learn from that. Alright, thanks James Button for your comments. Good morning from KL. That is by Jensen Cole. Because of the way, let's see, this comment is by Gmore. Because of the way you criticize art products, I have gotten into watercolor and started sketching people in public. Oh yeah, maybe I'll talk about how I criticize products as well, or criticize artworks. Because I do a lot of reviews, I try to be as objective as possible. You know that art is a very subjective thing, so I try to be as objective as possible. I try to let people know where I'm coming from. So personally, I like all sorts of art: fine art, classical art. Is it classical art? Modern art? Modern art not so much, but those old masters paintings, I love those. I like live drawing, figure drawing, urban sketching, watercolor paintings. The things that I do not like, there's only one thing, which is abstract art. So when I look at a piece of abstract art, I just don't understand the abstract art. But there are people who appreciate abstract art. So I am definitely not the right person to criticize abstract art, because I do not understand that. And sometimes when people criticize your work, they may not understand your work. That's why they give their criticism. It's just because they do not understand your work or where you're coming from. So when I'm criticizing art, I try to let the person know where I'm coming from, so that they know where I'm coming from. If not, they would just say that, oh, you're just another art critic. Let's see this question. The next question is by Cora Brown. Sometimes you want to get a critic instead of people telling you how good you are. What do you say to encourage constructive feedback? Oh, this is a good question. So sometimes I think it happens to me as well. When I post a piece of work, or when I see people post their work, you get comments like, oh, that is a nice sketch, it's a beautiful sketch, I love the watercolors, I love the colors. But how do you invite constructive criticism? Well, you try to ask for them. One question that you can ask is, how, especially if you have artist friends, the question would be, how would you improve the painting? What would you do if you are me drawing the same painting, how different would you draw the painting or paint the painting? How differently would you do? How would you frame the composition? Would you frame it differently compared to what I have? So ask them about specific things that you want to talk about. For example, if you feel that your color palette is not that good, ask specifically about colors, like how would you use colors in this instant, or how would you do the shading in this instant? How would you interpret light and shadow in this instant? If you're just posting your work online, for example, you're posting on DeviantArt or Instagram, and you're just posting, oh, this is a sketch that I drew in a cafe yesterday. People are just going to look at the sketch and they are just going to say, oh, hey, it's nice, it looks cool. But sometimes people may not be, they may not want to criticize your work, give you constructive criticism, because they are shy or they are courteous. They do not want to offend you. So if you ask for constructive criticism, you may get more comments. So yeah, James Button saying the same thing. And Richie asks, what is Holly's last name? Alright, Holly, actually the artist that I mentioned, her name is spelled as HOLLYEXLEY. You should check out her channel. She is very good. I watch every single one of her videos. Next question is by Won. How do you get out of a slump? What is your standard to choose constructive criticism and useless nasty criticism? All right, let's talk about the first part. How do I get out of a slump? Try to do something differently. I'm not sure if this question is talking about artist block or what, but try to do something differently. So if you are usually drawing with pencil, try a pen. If you are painting with watercolor, try just drawing with pen and ink. Do something different to challenge yourself. This would sort of kickstart your mind's creative process on how to go with the challenge. This is like solving a jigsaw puzzle or a challenge. Your mind will get into the creative mode, and then you can sort of use that to get out of the slump, to motivate yourself, or just concentrate on the drawing process. Like I mentioned earlier, just focus on the lines, how the lines look like. Just enjoy the process of drawing. If you're looking for ideas on how to get out of artist block, well, there are actually a lot of suggestions. One of them, I think the easiest way is to give yourself a project, have a personal project. It can be a sketching project. You can just have come out with some ideas, like for example, Sketch People. Liz Steele and Mark Taro Holmes, they are having this challenge that is going to start on the 5th of March. So it's about drawing 100 people. So you can use different challenges to motivate yourself, and yeah, you can use different challenges to motivate yourself. Just try different things, look around for ideas, see, and just do a search on Google, art ideas or art themes that you can use, or check out sketchbook videos, sketchbook tours on YouTube. There are a lot of artists sharing their sketchbook pages. Take a look at what's inside their sketchbooks and try to copy the ideas that they are doing. It's okay to copy ideas because you may be copying the ideas, but the art that you draw will be in your same style, so it's okay. I think looking at other people's sketchbook is quite helpful. The next part of the question is, what is your standard to choose constructive criticism and useless nasty criticism? So constructive criticism is something that you can use to improve your work. So if you think that you can use something from the comment or criticism to improve your work, that is constructive criticism. But if you cannot take any positive thing away, you cannot learn anything from the comment, then it's pretty much a useless comment. Like, for example, some of the useless comments would be, your colors are lousy. So why are the colors lousy? But that comment actually gives you an indication that your colors may be lousy, but the person didn't go on more. So it's really up to you how you should interpret that comment. Or your art is lousy, that's an even ambiguous comment. It's very difficult to take any learning point away from those things. So you just have to look at each comment and look at them and see, just judge. I think you probably have very good judgment. You can just see how that comment looks like. And this next comment from the chat room is by Mario Chavez. Yeah, if the comment sounds like a joke, then it probably is a joke. Or if a comment is written in such a way that it feels like the person has just typed it out without any afterthought, well, it's just some useless comment. We have some audience from India as well. Hello, Sweta Kaushik. Yeah. Let's give a shout out to some of those people who are in the chat room now. There's Lucky, Holly Johnson. We have, oh, the chat room is starting to scroll really fast. Cheesecake Fan, Enrichi, Asha H, Fear Art. There's this question from Fear Art. How do you handle criticism from your sister that's a professional artist? My sister is actually not an artist, but how do I handle criticism from a professional artist? That's a good question as well. As an artist, I have my own set of experience. Other artists will have their own set of experience, so you can definitely learn a lot from other artists. This is the same as going to an art school. You receive criticism from art teachers. All the art teachers, they have different skills, different levels. They have their own perspective, their own knowledge. And if you think about it, those people, those art teachers, the instructors, they have spent years, sometimes decades, honing their skills, painting, so they have a wealth of experience. And if you can just learn just a tiny bit from them, you would have saved so much time. So for example, if you take up live drawing session like figure drawing and your skills are not good, because there's actually a limit where you can reach. It's a personal limit. So if you want to improve beyond your personal limit, you have to learn from other artists, because the amount of time that you spend, you can only spend a certain amount of time because time is limited. But if you learn from other artists who have spent their years practicing their craft, you can learn even more. You can go beyond your limit. So sometimes it's actually very useful to just learn from other artists, and always try to learn from other artists. So I always learn from other artists by watching YouTubes, by checking out art books, hanging out with my artist friends. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Next question is by Anya Droids. Do you think that people posting their work on social media are looking for feedback at all? What's your experience? Well, some people just want to share their work on social media and that's it. Sometimes they want feedback, sometimes they do not want feedback, but most of all, I think when people are posting their work on social media, they just want to share their work. For example, I post my work, my sketches on my Instagram pages. The only text that I write for my sketches would be the location of the sketch, the colors that I use. I don't really ask for constructive criticism or any sort of criticism, but if people want to give their feedback, yeah, I will definitely read them. But when people are sharing their work on social media, it's usually just to share. But there are people who want to improve their artwork, so they would share their work with the intent of getting constructive criticism. I see that quite a lot on the DeviantArt forum. So when people post their artworks in the video description section, they would ask for constructive criticism. So those people, they are really trying to improve their art. They're asking for feedback on how they can improve. But most people that I know of, or most people that you probably see on social media, they just share their work online just because they love to share and they want to create a portfolio for their artwork. Let's take a look at other question. Andrew Kaur. For an artist just starting out, should you absorb yourself in criticism early on or ignore until you find your own artistic vision? I think you should get your basics right first. Let's talk about the most basic drawing. So if you are learning to draw from observation, try to get your drawing to a certain level first. Make sure that you can draw in such a way that when you show your work to somebody else, they can recognize what you are drawing. Then I think after you are past that stage, you can ask for criticism. Or if you have reached a stage where you believe that you can no longer improve, then you can ask for criticism. But if you are asking for criticism earlier on, sometimes it may or may not help you. For example, teachers, they may talk about certain techniques, certain concepts, but you are not at the stage where you understand what the person is talking about. It may be very valuable advice, but you haven't reached the stage where you can really understand. So you have to sometimes you have to improve yourself to that stage where you can accept that advice. Let me use some other example to explain what I'm talking about. So we have different education levels. For example, little children, they would go to kindergarten. If you give little children advice from primary school or college, those little children, they will not be able to understand it because they are not at the level to understand it yet. So they will need to grow a bit further, or they will need to improve themselves. If you are a school children, if you are a college going student, you are not at the level where you can understand concepts that are taught by university lecturers yet. So you have to grow yourself to that standard, and then after you have reached that standard, you can then sort of understand what they are trying to say. So if you're just starting out, don't worry too much about criticism. Just learn what you can. Try to be as good as you can from what you are trying to learn. And after that, if you feel like you have reached a level that you cannot improve, then you can start seeking advice from others. Next question is by Douglas Adams. Let me just drink some water first. So 2 weeks ago, I did a live stream that lasted for 1.5 hours. I talked until the throat was a bit dry. So this time around, I'll be sure to drink some water now and then. So the question by Douglas Adams: how do you find the time to sketch? I'm always so busy with work. All right, first tip: always have the sketchbook in your hand, as in literally in your hand, not in your bag, but in your hand. Have the pen out as well. So whenever you have that short 5 minutes of time, you can, or if you're waiting for your food somewhere in a restaurant or at a cafe, or if you are just waiting for your bus, your public transport at the train station, you have that 5 minutes. When you have the sketchbook in your hand, you can just open it up and start drawing. So even 5 seconds, you can draw something. And if you find that the time is a bit too short, then just treat it as a challenge, because you can actually draw a lot with 5 minutes. Sometimes when I take the public transport, I'm waiting for the train to come, I have 5 minutes, I would just draw something very quickly. I would just challenge myself to see how fast I can draw. Or when I am on the train, I'm standing in the train, because the trains here in Singapore, they are very crowded. So I'm standing in the train and the door has just closed and it's moving off to another station. So the time that it takes to move to another station is about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. I would use that time to quickly sketch some of the commuters in the train. I treat it as a challenge. I want to try and finish the drawing as fast as I can before the door opens at the next station. So I treat it as a sort of a game. That really helps me to sketch more. So the main tip really is to have the sketchbook in your hand. When you have the sketchbook in your hand, it's very convenient to just open it up and start sketching. You don't always have to spend like 20, 30 or even 1 hour for a sketch if you do not have the time. Alright, the chat, I see a lot of people coming in, and the messages, the comments, they are flowing quite quickly, so it's a bit difficult for me to scroll through. It would really help me if you pen your question with a big QNS question, or QN, so that would help me identify the questions. Okay, Jeff Peters from Netherlands has joined. Hi. Suhas Karmath, can you suggest any pen tablet, drawing tablet with a screen under $300? For $300, you might want to look at the Samsung Tab A with the S Pen. It's quite an old model, but I think it draws quite well because it has the S Pen, which has pressure sensitivity. It might be cheaper now because it's an old model, or you can check out the latest tablet that I've just reviewed, which is the Symbian's Picasso Tab. Those are quite affordable, or you can look for those refurbished iPads from Apple Store. But iPads, I think, are a bit expensive. Anyway, you can check out all the pen display or the pen tablet reviews on my website. I'm sure there is one for you. Let's see. Hi, Miran Abule. Oh, sorry if I pronounce all your names wrongly. It's very difficult to see. Luis Rinaldo Flores has a question. What you are doing? How do you? Let me just rephrase the question. How do you avoid repeating yourself when you are doing a series of paintings? Wow, that is a good question. Sometimes when I am sketching outdoors, I visit a place too often and I draw the same composition a bit too often. I like to change the way I think about the place. For example, if I'm at this place all the time, if I'm in Chinatown all the time, for example, drawing all the same things, the people, the shops, the stores, I may switch my tools. So instead of using watercolors, I may use pencil. Just when you're using different medium, you get into a different mindset. For example, if you are using pencil, you have with you the ability to create different tones. If you are using pen and ink, you have the ability to create contrast. When you're using watercolor, you are working with colors from light to dark. If you're using oil painting or gouache, you're painting from dark to light. So if you want to prevent yourself from repeating, you can try different medium. Try to change things about your painting, change the composition, change the colors that you use, change the color palettes, or look for inspiration online. Look for other artists whose styles that you admire, copy their style, and try to learn. Seriously, copy their style and use their style to apply it to your own style. So copy as many styles as you possibly can. And after that, all these styles will start to merge together and you will sort of have your own style. But don't just copy from one artist, because if you just copy from one artist, your work may start to look like that artist. Next question is by Alex Lorraine. I want to sell prints, but I'm not sure how to go about it. What steps or what first step would you recommend doing? Okay, selling prints. I know a lot of artists, they sell prints on their Etsy shops. They also sell prints on eBay. Some sell it through their website. Some even sell it on YouTube. The trick about selling prints, I personally do not have any experience, but as with all paintings or artworks, the trick about selling is to find people to sell to. And to find people to sell to, you need to create a lot of art, get your work out there so that people can see your art. The more people who can see your art, the higher the chances of you making a sale. So if you have a very small following, for example, if your Instagram page has, let's say, 50 followers, and you put out a print for sale, announcing it to your Instagram followers, which are only 50, then the possibility of getting a sale from that 50, it's not very high. But let's say if you have 50,000 followers on Instagram and you just make a print, now it becomes much easier, because going by the numbers, you just need like 0.001% of the people who are looking at your Instagram post to buy that art. So it's not really about selling art is not really about selling art. In order to sell art, you have to create the art. So the creation process is actually more important than the selling process. So I would definitely recommend you to create more art, create so much art that people cannot ignore you. Every time they go online, they see, oh, you have an artwork, you have a new sketch, and next time when you have a new print on sale, when you post up, people can know, people who see your art, they recognize, oh, this lady or this guy, he or she is selling a print. I've seen his work a few times, I'm familiar with the artist, and he or she may be interested to get your print. But the selling process, I will not worry too much about the selling process. I would focus more on the creation process and posting your work online, sharing it online, and also writing some text to go along with your artwork. I want to emphasize the writing part. The writing part is very important. If you have text that goes beside your artwork, it makes your art searchable. So for example, let's say if I'm at a cafe called the Paga Blocks Cafe, for example, and if Paga Blocks is not a good example because people may not know that name. But if you can name if you're sketching at a Starbucks cafe, for example, and you just drew there and you want to sell a print of that Starbucks cafe, you don't just post the sketch and just say that, oh, I have a print to sell. You have to write Starbucks cafe so that when people are searching online, they can type in certain keywords to find your art. If you are just putting your print up there and say, oh, this is a print that I drew at a cafe, it's going to limit the number of people who can see your art if it's just a keyword cafe. I mean, people may look for cafe sketches, but if you have more keywords, then you have more keywords for people to search for, then it is more likely for them to discover your art. So having text description beside your artwork is actually very, very important. And you don't really have to write a lot. You just have to write the main keywords. We have a comment by Bushcraft on Fire, which is quite good. Most criticisms are very subjective. They are from that person's opinion, and it may or may not be true. So that is what I've talked about earlier. Criticisms are very subjective because you do not know where that person is coming from. So if a person has live drawing experience, like classical art drawing experience, he or she may not be the right person to give criticism to a person who is drawing manga. Or if a person has manga drawing experience, likes to draw comics, he or she may not have the right experience to give you criticism on live drawing, on classical drawing. So you have to see who the person is. And on YouTube or on any social media platform, it's difficult to see who that person is when he or she is giving the criticism, the comments, because we don't know that person. So if a person say that, oh, your posture, your live drawing, your figure drawing posture sucks, it's, first of all, I don't know who you are. If you are a live drawing teacher, at least if I know that you are a live drawing teacher, I can ask you, why does the proportion suck? Why does the posture sucks? I can get something from it. But if it's just some random comment from a random person, I do not know who he or she is, it's a bit difficult to ask a further question to follow up. Let's see who we have on the chat room. James Barton with a question: do you think you are your own worst critic? So this would be something about inner criticism. So yeah, sometimes I do have my own critics, like when I'm drawing something, my sketch, it doesn't look good, it feels like it could be better. So that inner criticism is always there, but I try to disregard it, but I try to learn something from it. I mean, when I look at my own sketch, for example, it doesn't look good, then I will try to improve with the next sketch. But don't let the inner criticism, the inner critic, drown out your own thoughts, because you want to be creating. Even if the critic, your inner critic, says that, oh, this art sucks, your color sucks, your drawing sucks, the proportion is not right, the posture is not right, all the bad things, just ignore that, just push that to the side and just carry on doing what you're doing. Because sometimes the inner critic, I mean, it can help you improve sometimes, but sometimes it's just there to hinder you. You can just if you find, personally for me, I find that if I have the inner critic, I'll just go about doing what I usually do, so I can still get a lot done even with the critic. Next question, or is it a comment? This is by Brandon Burrows. You have critics? That's surprising. I think everybody has critic. I mean, there are a lot of trolls and haters, so anybody can throw out a nasty comment once in a while without any thinking. So that's how some parts of the internet is like. And because it's so easy to post comments online or on social media, it's very easy to criticize people. Some people don't really think too much about criticizing others. They don't even know that the person who is creating the work has spent so much time and effort on it. That really doesn't matter to the person who is giving the critic. So it's very easy to just type some nasty comment, and those nasty comments you can just disregard, because after they finish typing the comment, they are just going to click to another web page go and read something else, but you are the one who is going to deal with the comment if you take it too personally. Another question by Real D. I find that in most, or if not all, of my urban sketches, I omit people. Do you find yourself omitting something that's a common occurrence? Well, I know of artists who draw landscapes or urban landscapes that just do not like to draw people. They just draw the buildings, and I think it's fine. It's just their preference. But personally, I like to draw people because it makes the scene more lively. So it's actually okay for you to omit people, but you should know why you are omitting people in your drawing. And sometimes you try and add people in to see how it feels like. Yes, everybody has critics no matter what they do. Haters got to hate. And another thing about critics is some critics, they may not be artists, so they may not know what it's like to be creating, to be producing something, to create a painting, to draw. They may not understand the creation process. And the creation process is something that is really, sometimes I find it really energizing, really fun. It's a very creative process. But for someone who doesn't understand the creation process, he or she may not have the perspective of what it's like. Because when we paint, when we draw a sketch, for example, for me, if I draw an A4 sketch, it would take me 1 hour to 1.5 hours. But for the person who is looking at the sketch, he or she may not have the concept of how much effort it takes to draw the sketch. So he or she doesn't have a basis to judge that sketch. So let's say if I have a fellow friend who is a sketcher who has been sketching for years, he or she knows how long it takes to draw something that complicated. He or she will have the perspective to understand what I'm doing. But for most people, like your friends, your family members, if they do not understand the creation process, if they are not artists themselves, sometimes they just don't understand what you're doing, or they don't understand your drawing, and that is okay because that's just the way it is. Not everyone will understand you. Let's see, any questions? Right. Went to the library to practice observation skills without being noticed. What part of the head should I sketch? Person from the start, where do I end? Alright, this question is by Els Chimes. I used to sketch in the library a lot because people there, they are always sitting reading their book or newspapers. They are very good subjects to draw because they do not move much, and because their attention is on what they are reading, so they will not notice that they are being drawn. And the library is a very good place to practice sketching. So when I'm at the library, personally, I try to draw the shape of the body. I try to capture the posture of the person who is reading, and then add in the details. If you want to do a sketch of the head, try to draw the general shape of the head first. Try to have in your mind where the positions of the features are, but the position of the features like eyes, the nose, the mouth, they are all in relation to the head. So as you're drawing, try to draw, the general fundamental of drawing is to draw the big shapes first before filling in the details, which are the features. But some artists, they like to draw the features first and then filling the shapes. I think it's fine if you know what you're doing, but when you're drawing, just sort of keep in mind what you are going to draw. When you're staring at a blank page, try to imagine how your drawing will look like on that page, and when you're drawing it, it should be easier. So when I'm drawing a person who is reading, I will sort of visualize how I'm going to frame the person on the page. And I'll try to maybe mark out some of the areas, important areas, so that I get the proportion right, and then I continue drawing. So there's no specific place where you should start. Like some people draw from the mouth, some draw from the eyes. I personally find that drawing from the hair, the eyes would be the more natural place to start. And also, if you start by drawing the nose, for example, or start by drawing the mouth, if you get the position wrong or you get the proportion wrong, other features of the face, the head, it's going to look a bit off. So it's better to draw the general shape of the head first, and then place the features taking respect to the head that you have drawn. I think that would be the easiest way for beginners. Okay, let's see. Question by Netta's Play. I use Noodler's ink and it has been bleeding on my cold pressed 300 GSM paper. Any other ink suggestions, or should I change paper? Noodler's ink. There are different versions of Noodler's ink, so not all versions are waterproof. The one that I use is Noodler's bulletproof black ink, and even for the bulletproof version, it may not be waterproof on certain paper. I have friends who tell me that the ink still bleeds on certain paper, and I found that to be true as well. Some people also complain that the ink is not totally waterproof. It's water resistant. It has some smearing when you apply water over it, but it's not totally waterproof. But sometimes it's totally waterproof. So I'm not sure what's up with the ink. But I still use it nowadays because with the paper that I use, it's waterproof. So the ink and paper combination, it's important. But if you want to switch up, you want to change to other brands, you can check out the Sailor Kiwaguro, or what's the other one? The Ultramantis. So Sailor Kiwaguro is spelled as Kiwaguro. The Ultramantis is DEATRAMENTIS. So those are waterproof inks that are made for fountain pens. I used to recommend platinum carbon ink, but after a few months I found that when I go back to use the ink, it's no longer waterproof. So it seems like the ink is only waterproof when it's fresh, when you first open up the bottle, but after a few months it starts to lose its waterproof feature, which is quite weird. So the ink and paper combination is important. So before you try and draw something, before you paint water over the ink, try to test out the ink on a scrap piece of paper so that it doesn't damage your artwork. Another question by Brandon Burrows. What do you prefer, fountain pens or felt tip liners? I definitely prefer fountain pens because it is more durable, and with fountain pens you can refill them easily, so in the long run it's more economical. So some fountain pens, they are a bit pricey. You don't have to get those very expensive ones. There are a lot of budget fountain pens as well. Lamy Safari, Pilot Metropolitan, Platinum Preppy, all those are very affordable fountain pens, and they are very durable, so they can last you a lifetime unless you drop the pen or the pen has some accident. But other than that, it's going to last you a lifetime. Now the difference between fountain pens and felt tip pens is felt tip pens, they are usually sold with different tip sizes, so you can get very fine tips like 0.01 to I think 1.0, and in between 0.01 to 1.0 they have different steps as well. But for fountain pens, we just had fine, extra fine, medium, broad. We have some special nibs, but that's about it. So if you need line widths that are specific, if you need a specific thickness to your lines, then felt tip pens is the way to go. I believe that felt tip pens or felt tip multi-liners, those are the pens that architects use. So when you look at architectural drawings, you see that they have thin lines. For certain sections they use thin lines, for certain sections they use black darker outlines, and those drawings, they are drawn with felt tip pens. If you're using a fountain pen, I guess you can do so as well, but you need to find fountain pens with nibs of that specific size. And the quality of the fountain pen, when it comes to drawing, sometimes if you press a bit too hard, the lines, they may be a bit thicker. Some people like it, some people do not like it. It depends on what you're drawing. So Natas Play say that I let the ink set for 24 hours and it bleeds when I add watercolor. So I think that is probably an issue with the ink and paper combination. Some ink just doesn't get absorbed by the paper, so it always stays on the paper. The ink has to be absorbed by the paper. It has to form some sort of bond. If not, if the bond is not formed, then if you apply water, it's going to bleed. So some paper are better at forming that bond, some paper it's not that good, because I think some paper, they have some surface texture, or they apply some sort of chemical on the surface that prevents the ink from forming that bond. So you have to try out different paper to see which one works best for the ink that you have. Next question, let's see, can you go over once more how you deal with people staring at you? Have you ever had anyone confront you or have a negative reaction to you drawing them? This question is by James Barton. I think I have made a video talking about this specifically. That video is something about drawing on the public train. So to prevent people from staring at you, the first step is to avoid them noticing you. So when I'm drawing people, I try not to have too many movements. I just use my eyes to glance at the person. Nowadays it's a bit easier to draw people because they are always looking at their handphones, so it's very easy to avoid detection. So I try to avoid making big movements. I just glance my eyeballs, and over the years I don't really have anyone confronting me before, maybe because I'm very stealthy. I try to avoid looking at them, so I don't have any personal experience to share, or no experience with negative reaction. And if they do ask you what you're doing, why you're drawing them, you just say that you are practicing your art. You join an art lesson, you're just trying to draw people, you're just practicing, you're a student, you're just learning. I think that is a pretty good general answer. Let's see if we have any more questions. Alright, let's give a shout out to some of the new comers. Matthew Kernan, Sanjay Santukar, Santukar, Xander with a question. Huion 15.6-inch tablet or the Surface Pro 3? The Surface Pro 3 and the Huion tablet, the Huion tablet is actually a monitor. The Surface Pro 3 is a computer. So with the Huion, you need to connect to your computer. And with the Surface Pro 3, it's an old model, so the battery life is not that good and the screen is a bit small. If you already have a computer at home, I would recommend the Huion pen display because it's larger, it's more comfortable to draw on. Another question by Cora Brown. Who are some of the artists you have learned from the most and why? I learned a lot from other artists because I joined the Urban Sketchers group. Every month we have the sketch walk, and every month I would go sketching with them. I can see artists who paint and draw with different styles, so I just learn learn from their style, learn from their techniques. And usually artists, they are a friendly bunch of people. You can just ask them like how do they use their colors, what brand of colors they use, what pen they are using, what techniques they are using, how do you achieve these effects. You can learn a lot from other artists, especially if you are in a group, because generally speaking, I think artists are a pretty friendly bunch of people. Some artists are a bit competitive though. They may not want to share trade secrets, they may not want to share their techniques with you, and well, that's alright. You just, well, learn from other artists. There are so many artists you can learn from. As for who exactly they are, well, there are so many artists, it's very difficult for me to name them all. Another question by Melvin Yang. I'm curious, how do you organize the sketch walk with so many people? Yeah, actually the Urban Sketchers group, it did not start out with, the Urban Sketchers Singapore group, it did not start out with so many people. It just started with, I think, 4 or 5 of the founding members, and over the years, since 2009, it grew from there. The main thing about growing, if you want to get a lot of people to join, again, it's not about the getting a lot of people to join, it's about the creation process. Focus more on the creation process, create a lot of sketches, create a lot of work, share them online, and after that, people will start to notice your work. That's where you get more people, and when you have a lot of people, you can organize sketch walks, and some of those people, they will just appear. So in the earlier sketch walks, we have maybe 10-20 people, but nowadays the group can go as large as 50 people. So we have a pretty huge group. So how do you organize a sketch walk with so many people? You organize it with the help of other friends, because there are so many people. Some are newcomers, some have been there for a while. You get help from those who have been there for a while to help out the newcomers, to sort of introduce them to the group. Because if it's such a big group, it's a bit difficult to manage. So, and some of the beginners, when they come to our group, they have no idea what's going on. So it would be good to have some people, some experienced people, to sort of guide them around, to show them what's happening, what we are doing. If you are just handling such a huge group by yourself, and when they have questions to ask you, you are the only one person they can ask, it becomes a bit unmanageable. So it definitely helps if you have friends who can help you organize this sort of groups, this sort of sketching events. We have Barbara June from Florida. Hi. Thanks for watching all my YouTube videos. I see your comments very often. Another question by James Barton. Do you ever see yourself urban sketching in a style other than watercolor? Just curious. Yes, definitely. I'm trying to go into mixed media, but it's very difficult. Difficult in the sense that I have a lot of watercolor products to review. I'm going to feature the My Marie Blue watercolor review very soon, but after that, I have to use other brands of watercolor just to test them out because I want to make reviews for them. But I do want to sketch in other styles, especially mixed media style, mixed media with colored inks, mixed media with pencils, and basically other materials. So not just watercolor. I'm interested in all other traditional media, but I'm using watercolor most of the time because I need to create those reviews. But after that, I'm going to switch. But that's going to take a long time because there are too many things for me to try out now. And we have a question from Zen Besa. How to boost my friend's self-esteem to his art? He's bad to his own criticism. Wow. So how do you give constructive criticism? This is a very good question. He draws anime, manga, and you're more into children's book. All right. Find out what your friend is interested in drawing. I mean, I think you have to do a bit of research to see what kind of advice would benefit your friend the most. So if he's into drawing manga, animation, you can sort of refer him to some books. Maybe ask him to check out YouTube resources, books, and if you can look and see and pinpoint what's wrong with the art, you can phrase your question in such a way that it doesn't make him feel negative. For example, if his proportion is wrong, you can sort of suggest it in such a way that, hey, your character will look better with this sort of proportion. Your character or your drawing may look better if you adopt this sort of method. I have seen some other artists who use this drawing method, who post their characters like this, and it looks great. Your character, maybe you can try to post the characters like that. I know that some artists, they are a bit resistant to comments like this. Sometimes I feel a bit resistant as well, but you sort of try to get those ideas into their head, but whether or not they follow it will be different. Whether or not they follow your suggestion will really depend on them, because again, because you are a children book illustrator and your friend is a manga artist, he may not take your suggestion seriously because of the type of work that you do. So you have to sort of overcome that hurdle. I'm sorry I cannot give you a more detailed explanation on how to give criticism, but it would be better to get your friends. If you have other artists, manga friends, you can introduce them to your manga drawing friend. That may help. Victoria says that I heard that if you wear dark shades while drawing people, they will not notice you. Yes, that is true. So the other trick to drawing people without them noticing you is to wear darker shades like sunglasses. That is an almost foolproof way of preventing people from noticing you. But of course, you shouldn't tilt your head up once too often. That will give you away. Bushcraft on Fire has a question. How old am I? I am 36 years old. You look as though you could be in your early 20s, but you speak with so much wisdom as an older person. Well, thank you very much for the kind comments. I'm actually 36 years old. All the things that I talk about are from my own experience. I also try to learn a lot from other artists. So as mentioned earlier on, as an artist, you only have this certain amount of time to practice each day. There is a limit that you can learn on your own. But if you are learning from other artists, they have spent their career painting. You just need to learn a bit of from them, from this artist who has 20 years of experience. You just learn a bit from this artist who has 10 years of experience in portraiture. You learn a bit from this artist who has 10 years of experience in graphic design. You learn a bit from this painter who has 30 years of experience, and you just learn from all these artists, and all this knowledge will help improve yourself. Because if you're just learning on your own, it can be a bit slow, and sometimes it takes time to figure out certain things. For example, let's say if you are trying to draw light and shadow, for example, using different tones, and you just keep practicing and practicing, you can definitely learn to draw really well by practicing. But if you get comments and suggestions from somebody else who has done it, who has been painting for their whole life, they are going to be able to give you a very useful advice that you can use straight away, because they have been doing it the whole time. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions. This question is by Buster Gundo. How do you go about getting told to censor lewd works? Lewd works like offensive work, or nudity, or questionable work. Well, this is a tricky question. If you are painting offensive or nudity, well, I'm not sure why you should censor it, because that is your art form. But share a work on the right platform, because if you are sharing those artworks that are considered questionable on platforms like, for example, DeviantArt is more it's less classical art. So if you are going to post nude art there, it may not be the right platform to do so. And if you post your artwork, your questionable artwork, on platforms that are not suitable for those artworks, you are going to attract a lot of criticism. People are going to ask you to take it down. People are going to take offense. So post your work on the right platform, or you can just post it on your website. And one good way to sort of minimize criticism for your work is to explain your work. Put a face behind your painting. So explain who you are. Have a biography page, but explain your painting, explain your process, explain the thought that goes behind your painting. And when people read about the effort that you put into creating that artwork, they will know that there is actually a person who is creating that artwork. Let's see, the next question is by Moondance Karen. Do you have any thoughts on the Piglet parallel pen? Piglet parallel pen? Is that a Pilot parallel pen? I actually have the Pilot parallel pen. It's a good pen for use if you want to practice your calligraphy, because it's inexpensive and it can hold an ink cartridge converter, so you can refill the ink. And it comes in 4 different sizes, so you can practice really beautiful calligraphy. And I definitely recommend you to get it if you haven't done so, because it's inexpensive and it should last forever. Next question is by iCreed. Have you tested any of the new Cintiqs? If so, how are they compared to the new ones? I actually do not follow a lot of Cintiq news. I also do not review a lot of Cintiq products, as you may have noticed, because They don't send me stuff, and I also don't contact them to ask them to send me stuff. But I have borrowed a Cintiq from my friend before, and it works really well. Those are pen displays. I think I borrowed the Mobile Studio Pro, and the drawing performance, it's very good. It's as good as their non-pen displays, which is the Intuos tablets. It's as good as that. It's as sensitive as that. So if you're going to buy that, or if you're considering to buy one, I think the performance is, they do have a good standard when it comes to their products. So yeah, but I've personally not tested out all the new ones yet. Okay, let's see. What is your favorite color to draw now? This question is by Won. Alright, I'm going to make a video on colors, on the limited color palette. I'm not sure if you have watched the limited color palette video series, but in the series of videos, I make different, I color different paintings, different sketches with a limited palette. And if you're asking me what my favorite color to draw now, I have no favorite colors. I just use whatever colors that I have in the palette, because as long as it's a primary color, something that is yellow, something that is blue, something that is red, you can use it to mix any other colors. So when you're mixing different colors, when you're using a color that is not your favorite, you can learn more about that color, and you can explore more about mixing colors. So I think I used to have a favorite color like cerulean blue is still one of my favorite colors, ultramarine, Hansa yellow medium, phthalo blue. I used to hate the color phthalo blue, but after I used it a few times, I got to love it. So you should explore different colors, even colors that are not your favorite. That's what I try to do. We have a question by Ania Droids. Does your wife give you feedback sometimes? Is she a sketcher too? My wife, she doesn't really give me a lot of feedbacks, but sometimes she will just accompany to those sketching sessions. She is not a sketcher. And because my wife has no art background, it's very difficult for her to give constructive feedback, because she has no art knowledge. She doesn't know what kind of feedback to give. So for her to give me feedback, the usual feedbacks that I get from her something like, oh, this is a nice sketch, this is a nice drawing. So it's very typical of, it's very common sort of feedback that you see on social media. We have a question by Astra Faloria. I noticed you have done palette demos on Daniel Smith and Winsor & Newton, but none on Holbein. Do you have a problem with Holbein paints? Well, I use a lot of Daniel Smith and Winsor & Newton because I'm trying to use up the paints before I move on to using a new brand. If I do not use the Daniel Smith and Winsor & Newton paints that I have and move on to a new brand, I will have even more watercolor paints to use. And if I test another new brand, I will have even more paints to use. So I try to use up my paints first, use up what I have first before moving on to a different brand. So it's not like I'm avoiding other brands, it's just that I want to minimize the number of watercolor tubes that I have that is unused in my drawer. Would you say Daniel Smith is my favorite brand? I have 3 favorite brands. One is Daniel Smith. Their colors, the intensity of their colors, the quality is very good. The other brand that I like is Kramer Pigments. The colors from Kramer Pigments, they are very different from other brands because they have a lot of texture. And another brand I think maybe that I like would be Winsor & Newton or Mission Gold. Those two brands are very good as well. The quality is sort of comparable with Daniel Smith. Okay, I'm getting to the end of the chat session now, and my battery, the camera battery, is dropping to 1 bar, so I may have to end this live streaming session very soon. So we have a question from Liz Philbrook. What is your favorite paper to work on? Alright, since I paint mostly watercolor sketches, I use watercolor paper most of the time. Even for sketchbooks that I use, I try to pick a sketchbook with watercolor paper. And the most common type of watercolor paper is the cold press paper, which has texture on it. And that is a general purpose watercolor paper that I can recommend to everyone because it's a pretty versatile paper. So I started with using cold press paper with texture, and then I switched over to using the hot press paper for a while, and it is very different from cold press paper. The texture is smoother, it is better, it's more suitable for line art. It feels very different, and it feels very different from cold press paper. And the watercolor effects are also a bit different on hot press versus cold press. So I do suggest that if you are trying out different papers, try papers with different textures to see whether or not you like cold press or hot press or just normal drawing paper. Okay, hi Rivkar Maraf. I create Elma Hot 1-1 Bushcraft on Fire. Okay, so I think I've reached the end of the chat room messages. If you guys have any questions, you can still throw in. Maybe I will stay around for a few more minutes. So this live stream has been going on for 1.5 hours, and thanks to drinking some of this water, I can keep going. So sometimes when I'm recording videos for too long, my throat will get a bit too dry, or if I'm recording my YouTube videos, if I do a lot of retakes, it just gets my throat too dry. One says that I have watched your limited palette videos. Thank you very much. I'm going to make another video on the limited palette, on why on limited palette, on limited palette, on the restrictions of the limited palette. Is a limited palette really that good? What can it help you learn, and also some of the limitations, and what can you do to expand on the limited palette. So I'm going to have a video coming for that soon. Let's take some last questions. Okay, we have I'm going to answer the last question by C Reality. What's your opinion on underrated art supplies? Underrated art supplies, I think the most underrated art supply I know of is the Uniball pen that I always refer to, that I always recommend. These are actually office supplies pen, but they have waterproof ink in them. They are very cheap and affordable. Let's see if I have one behind. I do have one here. This is a Uniball Impact, which is 1.0 nib, so it's a very thick pen. It's an office supply pen, and this is something I like this because I can bring this on holiday. This, even if I drop it out of my pocket, I will not feel anything because it's so inexpensive, and it's really good because it has waterproof ink in it. Uniball, they make several office supplies with waterproof ink, and it's not just waterproof ink, they are also pigment ink, so the ink is light fast and it's going to last for a long time. And that's what I like about Uniball pens. I think this is probably the most underrated art supply that I know of. Let's see if we have any more questions. One of my friends has 48 colors schmink palette, but she says that she kind of regretted it because, wow, that's the end of that statement. All right, if you're going to buy a watercolor palette, if you're a beginner to watercolors, do not buy so many colors. Do not get 48 colors. That is too much. Do not get 24 colors. That is, in my opinion, a bit too much as well. Get those 12 colors box sets. 12 colors is sufficient enough. With 12 colors, usually they include some primary colors. You can learn a lot about watercolor mixing, color mixtures with a limited palette. So you learn more from a 12 palette rather than from a 48 palette, because when you have all the colors already pre-mixed for you, you're just applying those colors from the pen onto the paper. If you want a green, you just get the green from the box and just apply it. If you want purple, you get the purple from the box, you just apply it. It's too easy, and you don't really learn much about the colors, because some colors, they do not work well when you apply them straight from the box onto the paper. Some colors you do need to mix them, and you definitely get better colors when you mix them yourself, because you can get all those very interesting variation. So getting 48 colors, a box set with 48 colors, it's very expensive and it's not advisable. I would not advise it. I would not recommend it to beginners. Bushcraft Fire has a question. I began on cellulose paper and has recently gone all cotton. It's harder to move paints on cotton. Yes, because, well, actually it depends on the type of cotton paper that you use. Some cotton paper, they have sizing applied to it. Sizing is basically some chemicals that they add to the paper to help absorb the water, or is it to help absorb the water or keep the paint on the paper surface. Anyway, they have this sizing applied onto the paper, so that sizing will affect how water reacts with the paper. Some paper may absorb more water. Those are the paper that are very dry, and I hate those dry paper. It's very difficult to work with, but those dry paper, they are great for wet on wet techniques because they absorb so much water. It stays wetter for a long time, so you can apply wet on wet techniques easier. But here in Singapore, it's quite humid. It will take some time for the paper to dry. So for people who live in very humid countries, if you are using those dry cotton paper, it's very difficult to work with. Personally, I prefer cotton paper that dries very fast. So and with certain cellulose paper, they are not very durable. With cotton paper is like, you know, cotton t-shirt. You can wash the t-shirt so many times and the t-shirt still comes out all right. That is something like cotton paper, just that cotton paper is a bit thinner and you can paint on it. So cotton paper is more durable. You can have a lot of glazing over the cotton paper without the paper fiber coming off of the surface. So that's cotton paper's advantage. And yeah, I think cotton paper is very good if you can afford it. But not all cotton paper are equal because of the sizing that they apply on the paper or in the paper. Suzala, hi. Thanks for all your comments that you have posted on my YouTube channel. I can recognize your name. Have you ever used a wringer to get all the pigment out from the tube of watercolor? Yes, there is this sort of wringer that you can use to squeeze, sort of tighten the tube to squeeze out all the watercolor paint. I haven't really used that because I don't have one, I suppose that is quite useful because you can get the last drop of paint out of the tube. But usually for me, I just sort of squeeze as hard as possible to get that last drop out. Alright, so I think we have reached the end of this live stream session. Thanks for joining me. We have, let's see who we have here: James Barton, Barbara Joan, Wan, Estra Falario, Suzala, Bushcraft on Fire. Thank you all for joining me today. It's a great live session. Yeah, last question by James Barton before we leave. Is a parallel pen a fountain pen or a throwaway pen? Let's see if I have any here. Yes, I do have one here. This is the Pilot Parallel Pen. This is not a fountain pen because it doesn't have the traditional fountain pen nib. I'm not sure if you can see it clearly. My camera lens, it cannot zoom. Anyway, the review of the Pilot Parallel Pen is on my blog. So it looks like this. It has a flat nib at the end here, which allows you to draw calligraphy strokes. This is a 3.8 mm nib, so it's quite a thick nib. So it looks something like this. It's a pretty long pen. Alright, so that's all for today's live streaming session. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions regarding criticism, inner critics, on motivation, on how not to get discouraged, or even on artist blogs, you can post them in the comment section when this live stream video becomes live again on my YouTube channel. So thank you guys for joining me today. See you in the next video. Bye.